It's just heartbreaking when the reality finally hits.
So, there was this emotional farewell scene where Meri was finally leaving, and the way it all played out was honestly pretty intense. Kody and Robyn were giving her these dramatic goodbye hugs, lots of tears and theatrical moments. It seemed like the whole thing was a mix of genuine sadness and a bit of performance. There was a lot of tension in the air, especially around Kody, who kept oscillating between sounding heartbroken and, frankly, infuriating. He spent years publicly expressing his dislike for Meri, yet suddenly she's the favorite ex-wife, and he's breaking down over her leaving. It's hard to reconcile. Some folks pointed out that Kody's emotions seemed self-centered. He talks a lot about grieving and losing something special, but at the same time, his past behavior suggests he never really knew or loved her the way he claims. For instance, people recalled how indifferent he was even to small things that mattered to Meri, like knowing what kind of gum she liked, and how he used excuses like, "I'm just a guy," to dismiss her feelings. It seemed like he made little effort to truly connect with her, which left her frustrated and feeling invalidated. Those frustrations boiled over repeatedly, which explains some of Meri's sharp reactions, like the infamous gum argument. We've got so much to dive into today, so let's not waste any time. Let's jump straight into it. Hey everyone, what's up? It's Elena here, and welcome back to my channel Reality Nexus X. Robyn's role in all of this also came under scrutiny. Instead of being a supportive partner, some saw her as enabling Kody's narcissistic tendencies. She appeared more like a codependent figure, sometimes stealing the spotlight with her own dramatic moments, like when she opened a cheap scrapbook gift she made for Meri, seemingly just to ensure she got camera time. The dynamic between Kody and Robyn felt performative, almost like they were rehearsing their roles in this ongoing drama. On the other hand, some sympathized a bit with Meri, recognizing her vulnerability. Despite everything, she seemed desperate for some sort of affection or acknowledgement from Kody, even though she probably deserved better. Watching her cling to those fleeting moments of emotion made people reflect on how naive and hopeful she still seemed, even when it was clear that Kody wasn't really there for her emotionally. Meanwhile, the other wives and family members were watching this awkward, emotionally charged scene unfold. Nathan and Jen, for example, looked like they were trying not to laugh at the whole spectacle, perhaps sensing the performative nature of the moment and the underlying tensions. It was noted that they probably had a tough time witnessing all this while staying silent. There was also a lot of reflection on how Kody seemed more concerned about appearances and maintaining control rather than genuine relationships. Some suggested that the whole farewell was more about ego and manipulation than real grief. The repeated crocodile tears appeared to be aimed at keeping Meri hooked or at least maintaining his image, rather than expressing true sorrow. And it's telling that Robyn and Kody rarely spent real time with Meri in recent years, not even going out to dinner or inviting her over, yet now they were suddenly showing up all emotional at her departure. It all felt very staged and awkward, with moments like them blocking the doorway and looking like kids caught in an uncomfortable situation. The whole situation paints a picture of complex, messy relationships filled with unmet expectations, performative displays of emotion, and deep frustrations. There's a sense that Kody's pattern of neglect and manipulation wore Meri down over time, while Robyn's enabling behavior added fuel to the fire. Yet through it all, Meri's departure also symbolized a kind of freedom for her, a break from years of disappointment. In the end, it's hard not to feel a mixture of sympathy and frustration for Meri's struggles, for the toxic dynamics at play, and for the tangled web of relationships that none of them seemed able to navigate healthily. It's a reminder of how complicated love and loyalty can become when mixed with control, performance, and unmet needs. So there's this situation where a man, Kody, is courting and marrying a new wife while one of his current wives is heavily pregnant or just gave birth. The timing here is especially striking, like when Robyn was just 6 weeks postpartum, and Kody was already married to her and spending nights with the new wife. Understandably, this caused a lot of tension, especially since Christine, one of the wives, had just had a traumatic miscarriage not long before. It's hard to imagine how anyone thought that would go well, having a husband bring a new wife into the family during such a vulnerable time for a current wife. This kind of timing happened more than once. For example, Kody married Christine when Janelle was 7 months pregnant. So this pattern of adding new wives while others are pregnant or still recovering seems to be more of a feature of their lifestyle than a rare misstep. One key point people reflect on is how self-centered this feels. Despite the women's choices to enter this lifestyle, many of them grew up in the same religious culture that expected this kind of arrangement. So for Meri and Christine, especially, polygamy was never really a choice. It was just what they were raised to believe was normal. Janelle and Robyn, on the other hand, did make more active choices to join this lifestyle, though Robyn had also experienced a monogamous marriage before. Interestingly, not everyone agrees on who was born into polygamy. Some say Christine is the only wife who was truly born into it, while others clarify that Meri was raised in a monogamous LDS family in California and only joined later. Robyn's mother was involved with a man who had another wife, but that situation was seen as an affair, not formal polygamy. Timing is often the hardest part to swallow. Both Christine and Janelle were pregnant when new marriages happened, and that inevitably meant less emotional and practical support for the pregnant wife, which seems especially unfair during first pregnancies when everything is so new and frightening. People compare the experiences. Janelle was pregnant with her first child, and also facing the addition of Christine, while years later, Robyn was pregnant and Kody was courting Christine. Both scenarios were difficult, but the dynamics changed as the family grew. There's also a financial and emotional angle. For example, Kody's marriages happened under tight financial constraints, which shaped what was possible. Christine never got the honeymoon she wanted because of money, but there's speculation that if money had been no object, Kody would have done lavish things to keep everyone feeling special, like the way he lavished Christine with Christmas presents to make Meri and Janelle feel left out. That division seems intentional, almost like a strategy to keep the family fragmented and competitive. Another layer is the long-distance courting, especially with Robyn, who lived far away. Kody was spending a lot of time traveling and away from the main household, which made the dynamic more stressful for everyone involved. Christine complained about this distance and the amount of time Kody spent with Robyn, which added to her feelings of neglect during her pregnancy. What stands out is that none of this was new or unexpected within this family's context. Christine herself entered this life knowing what it was. She married while Janelle was in her final trimester. So while outsiders may be shocked by the timing, for them, this was routine. The problem is, it's a routine that involves constant pregnancy, emotional strain, and fractured relationships. When you look at the bigger picture, it's almost inevitable that one wife is always pregnant or recovering from childbirth because of the religious and cultural expectations to keep having children. This lifestyle ensures there's never a good time to add another wife. The constant pregnancies and the husband's divided attention create a scenario where jealousy and resentment seem unavoidable. Some people argue there's no oppression Olympics here. No one wife has it worse than the other. Both Christine and Robyn faced the same tough realities of their husbands courting and marrying new wives while they were pregnant or had young children at home. The emotional toll of this, especially during first pregnancies or after traumatic miscarriages, can't be overstated. There's also a sense that while some wives were outwardly supportive of new marriages, the reality was more complicated. For example, Janelle supposedly consented to Christine joining the family, but many believe the actual feelings were much messier, filled with jealousy and hurt. The family's public image often masked the internal turmoil. Ultimately, this situation raises a difficult truth about polygamous families in this context. The constant addition of new wives, timed without regard for existing wives' pregnancies or needs, reflects a system that is self-perpetuating and deeply flawed. The emotional needs of the wives and the well-being of the children are often sidelined to maintain the structure and beliefs of the group. It's a reminder that while this lifestyle might be accepted and normalized within certain communities, from an outside perspective, it can look like a series of impossible situations. A cycle where one wife is always vulnerable, and the husband's divided attention fuels ongoing tension. The real challenge is how anyone navigates these relationships with empathy when the entire system sets them up for conflict and emotional pain. I was re-watching a show recently and found myself really surprised by a moment involving Janelle and a discussion about college for the kids. It hit me in a way I hadn't noticed before. Janelle suggested that Aspen should stay home and commute to college so that Leon could attend a more expensive school out of town. What stood out was that she didn't make the same suggestion for Logan. Only Aspen was asked to make that sacrifice. On the other hand, Kody immediately said he wouldn't want to sacrifice one child's experience for another, which was pretty rare to see him take a firm stand like that. Christine didn't have to push for Aspen either. It seemed like the decision just landed on her without much debate. The family's whole approach to money and resources struck me as unnecessarily complicated. Each child was supposed to get a certain amount from the family fund, adjusted for cost of living, but anything beyond that was left to the parents' personal budgets. And then, surprisingly, Meri didn't receive any family money for Leon at all, which felt unfair given that Leon is her only biological child. Janelle, who I generally like, showed some moments that felt pretty harsh, like when she suggested going boating with Kody's friend Ken, who had made some really upsetting comments about divorcing 3 of the wives. She seemed aware it would upset Christine, and the gaslighting that Christine endured from Kody and the wives was hard to watch. Honestly, every adult in this family has shown selfishness, manipulation, cruelty, and neglect towards the kids at some point. It's like a fierce, almost cutthroat competition for attention and resources within the family. And unfortunately, all of them come off as deeply flawed. Some people pointed out that while all the adults behaved badly, there are definitely levels to it. Kody and Robyn often come up as the worst offenders, with Kody being at the very top. Others feel the original 3 wives aren't as bad as Kody and Robyn, but no one gets a clean slate. There's also a sense that fans sometimes unfairly give Christine and Janelle passes, even though their behaviors aren't much better. Janelle especially has a reputation for playing the logical and intellectual role in the family, but when you look closer, her actions don't always line up with that image. She had a strong influence over Kody, even being part of schemes like the one involving the property called Coyote Pass, where Meri was missiled and left out of decisions. Janelle also pushed for more land for her greenhouses, sometimes taking from Christine's share, and though she's described as quiet and introverted, that doesn't necessarily mean she's intellectually superior. Sometimes it just means she keeps to herself. On the financial front, Janelle's claims about handling the family's money have been questionable. For years, she portrayed herself as the financial genius of the family, but then claimed to barely know about taxes or bookkeeping later on. As someone with an accounting background, it's hard to imagine her missing big discrepancies unless she wasn't actually involved in the day-to-day finances. Her relationship with Kody also seemed complicated. She was willing to overlook some of his questionable behavior for a while, but things changed when Kody stopped coming around during the pandemic under the pretense of restrictions. Looking at the family's dynamics, the wives often didn't support each other the way you might expect. For example, when Christine was working nights, the other wives didn't really step in to help with the kids, which could have saved them money on childcare and reduced stress. Christine often carried a heavy load with caregiving and homeschooling, yet she didn't get the relief one would hope for. Janelle, in particular, sometimes seemed to prioritize her own downtime, like going to the movies or fishing, even when it meant leaving others to pick up the slack. It's interesting to note how the kids were treated in terms of resources. The family could have simplified things by setting a base budget per wife and a fixed amount per child for big expenses like college, cars, and weddings. Anything beyond that could be handled individually. Instead, it was all tangled up, and some kids got less, which understandably caused tension. For example, the frustration around Leon's college funding was pretty clear. Leon wanted to attend a $30,000 a year school, which was a lot for such a large family, but that desire wasn't fully supported by the family finances. Another layer to this is Leon's identity and choices. Leon, who is Meri and Kody's only biological child, transitioned a few years ago and uses they/them pronouns. They tend to keep a low profile and avoid the spotlight, so their story isn't often highlighted on the show. Some family members seem to support Leon's wish to attend a college with strong religious values, possibly to help them reconnect with their faith during a difficult time of self-discovery. It also came up that the family's expectations for children's education might have been influenced by traditional gender roles. There was speculation that the family expected daughters to attend college mostly to find a spouse rather than to graduate or build independent careers, a notion known as the Mrs. degree. This contrasts with some personal experiences shared about fathers, even conservative ones, who encourage their daughters to pursue education and independence. Throughout it all, Kody stands out as the central figure influencing much of the family's dysfunction. Many feel he's the root cause of the poor treatment among the wives and children, though there's some appreciation for his emphasis on higher education for all the kids, even if the financial follow-through was lacking. Ultimately, this family story is a tangled web of competing needs, flawed adults, and complicated relationships. Each member has their own faults and moments of selfishness, but together they paint a picture of a family struggling to balance love, loyalty, and fairness in an unconventional and often harsh environment. It leaves you wondering how different things might have been if communication had been clearer and if more empathy had been shown to both the children and each other. So here's an interesting perspective that's been floating around about some of the dynamics involving the sale of a property called Coyote Pass and the so-called McMansion. The idea is that Kody and Robyn might have been planning to sell both properties long before Meri officially split with them on Coyote Pass. The reasoning hinges on a few observations. During a late summer scene, the picnic tables on the land were freshly painted while the caretakers wore summer clothes, and there was talk from Kody and Robyn about this being one of the last times they'd be on the land. Kody even asked Robyn if she believed they couldn't afford to keep the land, to which Robyn responded in a way that implied financial priorities, maybe even hinting at buying more dolls or a new $2.1 million house. What's more, during the breakup picnic scene, some tables were already painted blue, and everyone was dressed in fall clothes, signaling some time had passed since the earlier painting. At that moment, Meri asked Kody directly about his plans for Coyote Pass, but Robyn immediately interrupted, suggesting Kody wasn't in the right mindset to talk about it. It seemed like Robyn was trying to keep Meri out of the conversation about selling the land, possibly because she already had plans for whatever profit might come from it. That situation made some people wish Meri had stood her ground, maybe told Robyn to let Kody answer first before jumping in. There's even a quirky detail noticed about Robyn's habit of saying "MK," which feels like her way of shutting down discussion, something Kody apparently picked up later, which struck some as quite odd. But on the other hand, there's some skepticism about this whole theory. For instance, it's been pointed out that the picnic table painting likely happened much later than the breakup conversation itself. Meri once said that the breakup talk occurred about 18 months before the current timeline. So the tables being freshly painted could simply be maintenance done long after the breakup, which makes sense, especially since the house was listed for sale shortly after the summer painting. That timeline aligns more with normal selling preparations rather than secret long-term plotting. Also, it's important to remember that Koya Pass has never actually been listed for sale and is still owned by the family. Kody and Robyn covered the down payment and mortgage for the new house themselves, while still paying for the McMansion. So it doesn't seem like they needed money from selling Koya Pass, which makes the idea that they were planning to sell it secretly less likely. Plus, legally, they couldn't sell that land without Meri and Janelle knowing, so keeping it a secret would be tricky. Some felt that Robyn cutting off Kody during that conversation was pretty suspicious and maybe indicated something shady she didn't want Meri to know about. Others thought people might be reading too much into the picnic table painting itself. There were several tables on the property, and the one being painted in that scene wasn't necessarily the first time they were maintained. In fact, a rewatch of the breakup scene reveals that the tables weren't freshly painted then. One looked dull and faded, suggesting that the painting happened later. This supports the idea that the scenes are shown out of chronological order, adding to the confusion. Beyond the property drama, there were some personal observations about the family dynamics. One perspective suggested that Kody's behavior has drastically changed over time, possibly influenced by Robyn, turning him into someone who just tries to keep peace by agreeing with her. This is seen as a pattern in relationships where one person shows strong narcissistic traits, causing the other to become overly reactive in maintaining their image and control. Some were harsh on Robyn, describing her as lacking dignity and being unlikable, challenging the idea that she is the pretty one in the family by reflecting on her appearance and attitude throughout the series. Lastly, a practical question came up about why Kody would be personally painting tables if he supposedly earns a good hourly rate. The suggestion was that perhaps it's just for show, a performative act rather than a necessity. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and much love to you all.